For more on our top story, we're joined right now on the set by Saruhan Hatipoglu, CEO of Beri Consulting. Welcome, and of course, our very own Sean Callebs, our Washington correspondent. Sean, welcome both gentlemen. Saruhan, how big of a deal are these cuts? And you heard Ginger's package. It's the military that takes the brunt of the cuts, or is it not?
It is actually the military, and I think President Obama took a gamble here. It was a calculated gamble, but it backfired, because half of the automatic spending cuts would be on the military, and he thought Republicans would back off from pushing for the automatic spending cuts. They didn't. They got some Democrats on their sides, actually, and the cuts will be in effect.
This is a wild situation. There's politics, there's money. I mean, Sean, you've been covering this for a while. You've been covering Washington for a while. Does this surprise you, what's happening?
There's a couple things we have to keep in mind. It is not troops. It's not men and women in uniform who are going to be feeling these cuts. It's the civilians. But that's going to put more pressure on these people at U.S. bases all over the world almost instantly. And think about the trickle-down effect of that. So many of these bases are really perhaps the financial hub of an area. You start cutting civilian employees, they stop spending. You can see what a chilling effect this could have on the U.S. economy. The economists have talked about it, 700,000 jobs in the first year alone, and our economy is not doing that well where we can afford a big hit like this.
The White House, a number of politicians have made a number of statements on who's to be affected. You've been covering this for a while. One of your focuses in our next story is about the transportation industry, the airlines, the air traffic controllers, and everyone that has to deal with it. Let's take a listen to what Sean picked up on this.
Passengers came and went at Washington's Dulles Airport, seemingly unconcerned, and at this point certainly unaffected by scheduled budget cuts that are coming. Enjoy it now is the word from transportation officials, because you can expect longer security lines and more flight delays.
The lines at the airports are long enough as they are already. If you start laying off people, you're just going to dramatically increase the wait time to be processed through the security lines. For the remaining part of the fiscal year, the Federal Aviation Administration says it must cut $600 million from its $16 billion budget. The cuts include furloughing, or making almost all of its 47,000 workers take an unpaid day off every 2 weeks, closing more than 100 air traffic control towers around the country, as well as eliminating the overnight staff at more than 60 control towers around the United States. Some preventative maintenance will be reduced for air traffic control equipment, as would support for air traffic control equipment. The Secretary of Transportation said in a statement, passenger safety remains the priority, and that, quote, "We may reduce the efficiency of the national airspace in order to maintain the highest safety standards." Republican lawmakers are frustrated. President Barack Obama is blaming them for the arbitrary 5% cuts across the board and is imploring congressional leaders to come to a more reasonable path of deficit reduction. Many in the GOP refuse to believe the sky is falling. And Republican House Speaker John Boehner says enough is enough.
And while there are smarter ways to cut spending than the process that we're about to engage on, the House shouldn't have to pass a third bill before the Senate does anything.
Well, until you really start seeing these control towers shut down, until you start seeing the TSA lines back up, until you maybe see an accident happen, a high-profile accident, people are just not going to believe it, because it's what's in it for me.
We welcome to the discussion now Ted Parrish, principal at Henssler Financial, near Atlanta, Georgia. Welcome to the discussion here. You know, as you just heard, as an American and as an international person, you hear the words, they're going to shut down control towers, they're going to shut down parts of airports. Is this just fear-mongering, or is this going to be a real situation that we have to worry about?
Well, we've seen it before. The government's shut down before. Yeah, there is a slight possibility of that happening. From a worldwide perspective and a U.S. perspective, I think it's a good thing, because, you know, we've got to stick to our promises. We definitely, as a country, need to cut back on spending. You know, the stock market was up this week in light of, you know, the sequester coming into play today. So I think, you know, that a message needs to be sent to Washington that, you know, we need to cut back on spending. I mean, you know, the sequester, while it's $85 billion, you know, over the rest of the fiscal year, it's not as big of a deal as, you know, the tax cliff that we just faced. I think that it's more of a slope, so it's not going to bring the economy to a halt.
You know what the real concern is for a lot of folks is that this is the beginning of some sort of European austerity measure, that this might be just the beginning. And Saruhan, I don't know if you agree with that or not, but you heard what Ted had to say. Do you agree that this has to happen this way?
Well, I agree with Ted that spending cuts needed to be introduced, but not this way. This was random. And I believe, again, if you look at the number, the 85 billion number, only half of that will be coming into effect this year because of contract issues that will go into 2014. So if you look at $45 billion in an economy of 13.56 trillion, it doesn't look bad. So macro impacts of this not going to be very heartfelt this year, but there's going to be a lot of micro impacts, like we talked about, employees being furloughed and people losing their jobs.
Sean?
I think what I hear, I read perhaps the best article. Someone said this is using a meat cleaver instead of a scalpel to attack the budget. And I think that makes a lot of sense. And if you go around the country and you talk to people about what's going on with the economy, they point all their blame to the White House and Capitol Hill. It's very frustrating. It is embarrassing on an international platform that these sides cannot get together and come to some kind of arrangement. The Congress takes a week off. The first thing they do when they come running back to the Hill is run to microphones and having competing sound bites. It's your fault. It's your fault. And then Barack Obama today saying this is all plain dumb. It's not helpful.
Ted, you heard what Sean had to say. Is this the best solution? Is this the best we've got, or can we do better?
Hey, look, I don't trust politicians. I think we need to have turnover in Washington.
At least we can all agree on that. I have a feeling.
They drag us to the edge every time. I mean, it's the same story. It's like Groundhog Day. You know, I really didn't expect any different, but I do think the threat of the government being shut down and also the debt debate in May is going to definitely push these guys and gals to make some real change. I mean, you know, it's ugly. We don't like it to happen this way, but you know what? At the end of the day, as long as we get some change and some cuts and some real change, I think it'll be great for the economy, both domestically and globally.
Ted, I want to go, you know, this is a rarity. We have so many panelists here to discuss this, but I want to ask each of you a very simple question, and maybe you can give me a quick answer so we can get to everybody. But first, I want to start with you. You can answer one of these. Give me the best case scenario for this or the worst case scenario.
Best case scenario, come 2 weeks when they're doing the budget negotiations, they agree on a compromise budget, and this issue is resolved for the year. Economic growth is happening in the U.S. This is not the time to impede with that.
There's still hope, Sean?
Yeah, I agree on the best case argument there. But in a worst case scenario, nothing happens. This drags on. We have the 5% cut across the board, 8% in terms of military spending. And if the sky doesn't fall, then the American public is fed up. Look, we just spent $60 billion bailing out those affected by Superstorm Sandy. So a lot of people say, $60 billion here, $85 billion here, what's it matter?
Ted?
Yeah. Worst case is we come May and we don't agree in a quick and fast way on the debt ceiling and the U.S. debt is downgraded again. And you want to see the capital markets go crazy, you'll have it again, and that would be disastrous.
Ted Parrish, thank you very much. From the Henssler Financial, Saruhan Hatipoglu, thank you. And of course, as always, Sean Callebs here in Washington, D.C. with us. Thank you very much.